Okay. I swear Satan's such a liar. I have been fighting him and fighting him. I had it all ready to go, and then it just all closed on me. And so I had to redo it again. Frustrating. Okay, so I have, as you can see on the screen, I have the actual videos. And I was going to see if the videos will actually play now, because I cleaned a bunch of stuff off my computer. So I'm hoping it does. But we shall soon see. So, starting with Deuteronomy 3, before we read it, I'd always like to do this, but I have his PDFs open just in case. These PDFs are kind of weird though, as opposed to how they normally look with his. So I don't know what he did weird with these, but they don't look as pretty as they usually do. But we'll see how this goes. So let's give it a try. It's opening a page. Hopefully this won't close our video. I mean, in our stream by me opening this on the other side. And it really sucks. If I was doing Zoom, I could probably play it. Whatever. With it. So we know the when and the where, and the characters are still the same. The Israelites are the Hebrews, Moses, King of Sirion, which is king of the Amorites, king of Heshbon, and Og, the king of Bashan, which we already know the story because we've been reading. We know the where. We already have that. It says this chapter describes how Moses divided up Bashan, Gilead, and the land of the Amorites, and distributed it between the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh. It wasn't that long ago that we just read Deuteronomy. How funny. Okay, guys. I think it's registering my voice. I don't even know. I'm so irritated right now. Okay, so in the outline, if we can read it through all this weirdness, the defeat of King Og of Bashan. Og, the king of Bashan, prepared his army and went to fight with Israel. See it all the way to the left there. God told Moses not to fear Og because God intended to give Og's land to Israel. At the battle, the Israelites defeated all of Og's men and took possession of its 60 cities. The cities and their inhabitants were destroyed. The text tells us Og was a descendant of the rephaim, men renowned for their height. The dimensions of his bed are mentioned, roughly 13.5 feet long and 6 feet wide, or 4.1 by 1.8 meters. I would know more by describing it by feet than meters. The inheritance of Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh, verses 12 through 20. The land of the Israelites had conquered east of the Jordan. East of the Jordan was given the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and half the tribe of Manasseh. You know, punctuation is very important here. These tribes had specifically requested the land because of their large number of livestock. And that was in Numbers 32, 1 through 5. But Moses required the men of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh to keep their word and help the other tribes conquer the land west of Jordan before settling in their homes. Just got through reading this in Numbers in the daily the daily reading. Not too long ago. Moses is prohibited from entering Canaan, verses 21 through 29. Moses encouraged Joshua to remember Israel's defeat of Sihon and Og and allow it to give him confidence God would aid him as he led the people across the Jordan to fight more battles. Moses knew God had forbidden him from entering Canaan, Numbers 20, verse 24. But he pled with God to change his mind. God was resolute and would not permit him to enter. He told Moses to ascend the nearby mountain, Mount Pisgah, and took over the land. And look over the land of Canaan from afar. The application: godly people may still have to endure consequences of previous sins. Moses was a godly man, and there is no doubt he was faithful to God following the misstep that prohibited him from entering Canaan. There will be times when we must face the consequences of our bad decisions even after we've repented and gotten back on track. This truth should give us pause when judging other people. A person struggling through the consequences of sin may no longer be a sinner. They may be a godly person working through the consequences of poor decisions in a past life. I've had past sins, and I've had to pay for them years later, even after repentance. I've had them come back to bite me, and I still had to pay for them. You know, even though God forgave me for them, and I had repented for them, and the whole thing, I still had to pay for those sins. They came back on me, so it does happen. So that was Deuteronomy 3. I'm so mad that this wouldn't play. I don't understand. Control-click. Do it one more chance. Yep, no. It's not even trying to play. It's not even trying to play. It's playing less now than it did before. I don't get it. I'll figure it out. Anyway, so going on to our readings, we already covered all this stuff. Put that up there because I have open space. Go slow with you. Please go slow. Please don't rush to wherever you need to be. Oh, thank you. See, this is why I don't pay for. This is why I pray for patience, because I have none. Deuteronomy 3. King Og defeated. They returned and went up the road to Bashan, and Og, king of Bashan, came out against us, he and all his people, to battle at Adrian. And the Lord said to me, do not fear him, for I have delivered him and all his people and his land into your hand. You shall do to him as you did to Sirion, king of the Amorites, who dwelt at Heshbon. So the Lord our God also delivered into our hands Og, king of Bashan, with all his people. Bashan? I'm not sure how it's pronounced. And we attacked him until he had no survivors remaining. And we took all his cities at that time. There was not a city which we did not take from them. 60 cities. All the region of Argob. The kingdom of Og in Bashan. All these cities were fortified with high walls, gates, and oh, this jacket feels so warm. Oh my goodness, I didn't realize how cold it was until I put it on. Oh, warm. With high walls, gates, and bars, besides a great many rural towns. And we utterly destroyed them, as we did to Sirion, king of Heshbon, utterly destroying the men, women, and children of every city. But all the livestock and the spoil of the cities we took as booty for ourselves. And at that time we took the land from the hand of the 2 kings of the Amorites, who were on this side of the Jordan, from the river Arnon to Mount Hermon. The Sidonians call Hermon Sirion, and the Amorites call it Sinir. All the cities of the plain, all Gilead and all Bashan, as far as Sapta and Adrian, cities of the kingdom of Og in Bashan. For only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of the giants. Indeed, his bedstead was an iron bedstead. Is it not in Rabbah of the people of Ammon? 9 cubits. I know why it's not going like it's supposed to. Right? I know what I missed. I was wondering, like, why am I, when I scroll down, it's not going to the next page? Because I'm sleepy and I'm a dork. Okay. 9 cubits is its length, and 4 cubits its width, according to the standard cubit. The land east of the Jordan divided. In this land, man, I ate some French toast this morning with syrup on it. My mouth is going dry. I guess I shouldn't have eaten that sugar. Goodness. I gotta test my sugar. In this land which we possessed at that time, from Aurora, I don't know how to say that, dang, which is by the river Arnon and half the mountains of Gilead and its cities, I gave to the Reubenites and the Gadites. Find my test kit there. It is. The rest of Gilead and all Bashan, the kingdom of Og, I gave to half the tribe of Manasseh. All the region of Argob and all Bashan was called the land of the giants. Jair, the son of Manasseh, took all the region of Argob, as far as the border of the Geshurites and the Maacathites, and called Bashan after his own name, Haveth Jair, to this day. Also I gave Gilead to Machir, and to the Reubenites and the Gadites I gave from Gilead as far as the river Arnon, the middle of the river as the border, and as far as the river Jabbok, the border of the people of Ammon, the plain also, with the Jordan as the border, from Chinnereth as far as the east side of the sea of the Arabah, the Salt Sea, below the slopes of Pisgah. And as I'm reading these, right, we're reading something that was written thousands of years ago that talks about the land that God gave to his people, his chosen, right? And I'm thinking of this crap that these idiots are chanting, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Morons. And as I'm reading right here, where God is giving this land to his chosen. So how are they trying to say that it belongs to the Palestinian people? Palestinians are not a people. Just like New Yorkers aren't a people. They're people that live in New York. Palestinians are people that live in Palestine, but they have different bloodlines. Hi, Bella. I didn't know you were in the window. Sorry, it just irritates me. But here it's talking about where God gave them this land. How many thousands of years ago do you think that Deuteronomy was written? Yeah, it wasn't written just like last week. Just saying. Or a couple of years ago, you know. No. It wasn't until 1917, because God had scattered his people, and Jerusalem became a really desolate place for a long time. And we read it. We read where he did this, where he said he was going to, and he did, because God doesn't make empty promises. I promise you that. No pun intended. In any way, shape, or form. There's my blood sugar. 176. Well, my goodness. I guess I probably shouldn't have eaten syrup on those pancakes. Guess I better stop eating my dry cereal that I munched on too. Fine. I usually don't eat stuff like that for breakfast. If I do eat breakfast, I usually make like hash browns that I cook in avocado oil. Just it's like healthy. And an egg with cheese, you know, and just kind of stack it up. If I don't make an omelet with my bell peppers and onions and my homemade salsa that I make, which I have the salsa instead of the peppers. I haven't had an omelet in forever. Well, so that's kind of sound good too. Anyway, let me get back to my reading. No, Belle, you cannot get in my lap, man. No, not right now. Don't nurse your squishy over there. Come on now. Let me go to 15. I think that, I'm not sure where I left off. No, I read 15. Salt Sea, below the slopes of Pisgah. Okay, so picking up on 18. Then I commanded you at that time, saying, the Lord your God has given you this land to possess. All you men of valor shall cross over, armed before your brethren, the children of Israel. But your wives, your little ones, and your livestock, I know that you have much livestock, shall stay in your cities which I have given you, until the Lord has given rest to your brethren as to you. And they also possess the land which the Lord your God is giving them beyond the Jordan. Then each of you may return to his possession which I have given you. Oops, wrong side. And I commanded Joshua at that time, saying, your eyes have seen all that the Lord your God has done to these two kings. So will the Lord do to all the kingdoms through which you pass? You must not fear them, for the Lord your God himself fights for you. Moses forbid to enter the land. Then I pleaded with the Lord at that time, saying, O Lord God, you have begun to show your servant your greatness and your mighty hand. For what God is there in heaven or on earth who can do anything like your works and your mighty deeds? I pray, let me cross over and see the good land beyond the Jordan, those pleasant mountains and Lebanon. But the Lord was angry with me on your account and would not listen to me. So the Lord said to me, enough of that. Speak no more to me of this matter. Go up to the top of Pisgah and lift your eyes toward the west, the north, the south, and the east. Behold it with your eyes, for you shall not cross over this Jordan, but command Joshua and encourage him and strengthen him, for he shall go over before this people, and he shall cause them to inherit the land which you will see. So we stayed in the valley opposite Beth Peor, and then Deuteronomy 4. Okay, the wind's the same. The characters are just the Israelites and Moses, and the where is the same. Okay, so they're still in Moab, the plains of Moab. Okay. So Moses commands the people to keep God's law. Moses instructed the Israelites to honor God's laws as they conquered Canaan and made it their home. This is first 14 verses in chapter 4. He warned them not to add to God's words or take anything away from them. The Israelites were to cherish God's law because it was unique among the nations. The prohibition and punishment for idolatry, verses 15 through 18. I tried to make this easier. Now, you know, it's funny. There it goes. Okay, it looked different at first on the screen. I tried to make this easier to see because but I noticed when I first brought it, when it first came on the screen, what you're seeing, it was still that dark yellow, and you were able to see it. I was able to read the words just fine, so I could have just left it alone and not lightened that area. Oh well. Anyway. Okay, so the Israelites were to cherish God's law because it was unique among the nations. And then the prohibition and punishment for idolatry, verses 15 through 28. When God spoke from Mount Sinai and gave Moses his law, he did not appear in a physical form resembling something in the natural world, so the Israelites were not to make figures to represent God or to bow down in worship to any man-made idol. If the Israelites forgot God's law after making their home in Canaan, God promised to scatter them among the nations and make them the servants of men who worship false gods. A promise of God's future mercy, verses 29 through 31. God, speaking through Moses, foretold of a time in the future when the Israelites would disobey him and would lose the land of Canaan. God promised the people if they would repent and return to him, he would be merciful to them and keep his covenant with them. Israel's special relationship with God, verses 32 through 40. Moses did not want the people to forget the privileged position God gave them. No other nation enjoyed the same closeness with God as the Israelites. They heard God's voice at Sinai, and the Lord personally freed them from Egypt with miracles. These things were done to convince the Israelites that their God was one true God and to impress on them the importance of obeying the Lord's commands. Moses established the cities of refuge east of Jordan, verses 41 through 43. Moses appointed Bezer, Ramoth, and Bashan cities of refuge. These cities offered protection to those who accidentally killed another person. We read about that in Numbers 35, verses 9 through 11. An introduction to the presentation of God's law, verses 44 through 49. The final verses of this chapter set the stage for Moses' speech, which begins in chapter 5. The application: Moses presents a balanced picture of God in his words to the Israelites. God is a consuming fire who will not tolerate wickedness. God is also a merciful God who happily offers forgiveness and mercy. Amen. Don't need to say no. No. Okay, so Moses commands obedience. Now, O Israel, listen to the statutes and the judgments which I teach you to observe, that you may live and go in and possess the land which the Lord God of your fathers has given you. You shall not add to the word which I command you, nor take from it, that you may keep the commandments of the Lord your God which I command you. Your eyes have seen what the Lord did at Baal Peor, for the Lord your God has destroyed from among you all the men who followed Baal of Peor. But you who held fast to the Lord your God are alive today, every one of you. Surely I have taught you statutes and judgments. Well, not my night clothes. Just as the Lord my God commanded me, that you should act according to them in the land which you go to possess. Therefore be careful to observe them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the peoples, who will hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what great nation is there that has God so near to it, as the Lord our God is to us, for whatever reason we may call upon him? And what great nation is there that has such statutes and righteous judgments as are in all this law, which I set before you this day? Only take heed to yourself and diligently keep yourself, lest you forget the things your eyes have seen, unless they depart from your heart all the days of your life. And teach them to your children and your grandchildren, especially concerning the day you stood before the Lord your God in Horeb, when the Lord said to me, gather the people to me, and I will let them hear my words, that they may learn to fear me all the days they live on the earth, that they may teach their children. Then he came near and stood at the foot of the mountain, and the mountain burned with fire to the midst of heaven, with darkness, cloud, and thick darkness. And the Lord spoke to you out of the midst of the fire. You heard the sounds of the words, but saw no form. You only heard a voice. So, hold on. Gosh. Oh, sorry about that. Oh, gosh, those potassium pills they gave me this last time I got it filled, they don't like crumble easily like the ones before them. The ones before them, they would start dissolving right away, which was disgusting. It was like eating a baby aspirin. It was like eating a regular aspirin. It, tasted like crap, but at least it crumbled. These don't at all, and they're huge, and they like to go sideways in my throat, and it hurts. Just trying to get that swallowed down. I was having to take my pills because my blood sugar's really high, and that sucked. Sorry about that. Ugh. I hate taking pills. I am so ready for my glorified body. Eesh. I know, people have it way worse than I do. I shouldn't complain, right? I'm sorry, Father. Okay, so I don't know where I was even at. I'll just pick up at 12. And the Lord spoke to you out of the midst of the fire. You heard the sound of the words, but saw no form. You only heard a voice. So he declared to you his covenant, which he commanded you to perform, the 10 Commandments. And he wrote them on 2 tablets of stone. And the Lord commanded me at that time to teach you statutes and judgments, that you might observe them in the land which you cross over to possess. Beware of idolatry. Take careful heed to yourselves, for you saw no form when the Lord spoke to you at Horeb out of the midst of the fire, lest you act corruptly and make for yourselves a carved image in the form of any figure, the likeness of male or female, the likeness of any animal that is on the earth, or the likeness of any winged bird that flies in the air, the likeness of anything that creeps on the ground, or the likeness of any fish that is in the water beneath the earth. And take heed lest you lift your eyes to heaven, and when you see the sun, the moon, and the stars, all the hosts of heaven, you feel driven to worship them and serve them, which the Lord your God has given to all the peoples under the whole heaven as a heritage. Bell eyes, Brandon ignoring her. Aww. But the Lord has taken you and brought you out of the iron furnace. I don't know why all the female cats love him. All the cats, not just the females, all the cats love Brandon. They just love him. I don't know. But the Lord has taken you and brought you out of the iron furnace, out of Egypt, to be his people and inheritance, as you are this day. Furthermore, the Lord was angry with me for your sakes, and swore that I would not cross over the Jordan, and that I would not enter the good land which the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance. But I must die in this land. I must not cross over the Jordan, but you shall cross over and possess that good land. Take heed to yourselves, lest you forget the covenant of the Lord your God, which he made with you, and make for yourselves a carved image in the form of anything which the Lord your God has forbidden you. For the Lord your God is a consuming fire, a jealous God. When you beget children and grandchildren, and have grown old in the land, and act corruptly, and make a carved image in the form of anything, and do evil in the sight of the Lord your God, to provoke him to anger, I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day, that you will soon utterly perish from the land which you cross over the Jordan to possess. You will not prolong your days in it, but will be utterly destroyed. And the Lord will scatter you among the peoples, and you will be left few in number among the nations where the Lord will drive you. And there you will serve gods, the work of men's hands, wood and stone, which neither see nor hear nor eat nor smell. But from there you will seek the Lord your God, and you will find him, if you seek him with all your heart and with all your soul. When you are in distress, and all these things come upon you in the latter days, and you turn to the Lord your God and obey his voice, for the Lord your God is a merciful God. He will not forsake you nor destroy you, nor forget the covenant of your fathers which he swore to them. For ask now concerning the days that are past, which were before you since the day that God created man on the earth, and ask from one end of heaven to the other, whether any great thing like this has happened, or anything like it has been heard. Did any people ever hear the voice of God speaking out of the midst of the fire, as you have heard and lived? Or did God ever try to go and take for himself a nation from the midst of another nation, by trials, by signs, by wonders, by war, by a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, and by great terrors? With a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, his love endures forever. Sorry, made me think of that song Forever. I love that song. Anyway, sorry. By a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, and by great terrors, according to all that the Lord your God did for you in Egypt before your eyes. To you it was shown, that you might know that the Lord himself is God. There is none other besides him. Out of heaven he lets you hear his voice, that he might instruct you. On earth he showed you his great fire, and you heard his words out of the midst of the fire. And because he loved your fathers, therefore he chose their descendants after them. And he brought you out of Egypt with his presence, with his mighty power, driving out from before you nations greater and mightier than you, to bring you in, to give you their land as an inheritance, as it is this day. Therefore know this day, and consider it in your heart, that the Lord himself is God. In heaven above, and on the earth beneath, there is no other. You shall therefore keep his statutes and his commandments, which I command you today, that it may go well with you and with your children after you, and that you may prolong your days in the land which the Lord your God is giving you for all time. Cities of refuge east of the Jordan. Then Moses set apart 3 cities on this side of the Jordan, toward the rising of the sun, that the manslayer might flee there, who kills his neighbor unintentionally, without having hated him in time past, and that by fleeing to one of these cities he might live. Okay, how do you just accidentally kill your neighbor? Well, I was walking down the street with an axe in my hand, and I tripped over a rock, and the axe flew out of my hand and hit my neighbor in the head. How do you accidentally kill your neighbor? I mean, seriously. I don't get it. I mean, back in those days, you know, because it's not like they had guns and stuff. But evidently it happened. Alright, so anyways, I was just being silly. Yeah, without having hated him in time past, and that by fleeing to one of these cities he might live. Bezer in the wilderness on the plateau for the Reubenites, Ramoth in Gilead for the Gadites, and Golan and Bashan for the Manassites. Introduction to God's law. Now this is the law which Moses set before the children of Israel. These are the testimonies, the statutes, and the judgments which Moses spoke to the children of Israel after they came out of Egypt, on this side of the Jordan, in the valley opposite Beth Peor, in the land of Sirion, king of the Amorites, who dwelt at Heshbon, whom Moses and the children of Israel defeated after they came out of Egypt, and they took possession of his land, and the land of Og, king of Bashan, 2 kings of the Amorites, who were on this side of the Jordan, toward the rising of the sun, from Aurora, which is on the bank of the river Arnon, even to Mount Sion, that is Hermon, and all the plain on the east side of the Jordan, as far as the sea of the Arabah, below the slopes of Pisgah. Okay, that's that. All right, and then we're reading. Oh, for crying out loud! Did you close Mark 10 now? Oh, Satan, you suck so hard. All right, let me open Mark 10 back up. I really am ready to just go back to bed and start this day over. I had it ready to go and everything at verse 32. We were looking at. Okay, we're picking up on verse 32. So here's verse 32 through 34. And they were on the road going up to Jerusalem, and Jesus was walking ahead of them. And they were amazed, and those who followed were afraid. And taking the 12 again, he began to tell them what was to happen to him, saying, See, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the scribes, and they will condemn him to death. I turn my little space heater on. I am just cold. And deliver him over to the Gentiles. And they will mock him and spit on him and flog him and kill him. And after 3 days he will rise. He couldn't have been any clearer than that. How could he? Oh. Verse 32 tells us Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem. Oh, yeah. This was his final trip before the crucifixion. The disciples with him are described as being amazed and afraid. Why? Why? Why would you have to ask why? It may have been because of Jesus' teaching about the rich man and the camel going through the eye of the needle. Well, yeah, that has worried me too. Matthew 19:25 says they were greatly astounded by the teaching. Or it may have been a response to the words Mark reports in verses 33 and 34. As they are walking, Jesus takes the 12 apostles aside privately and tells them what they will witness when they arrive in Jerusalem. The chief priests and scribes will take Jesus, condemned by Gentiles, mocked, spit on, flogged, killed, and will resurrect after 3 days. I said down, which is supposed to go forward. Stupid thing. If I knew that fate awaited me upon my entrance into a city, I would be running in the opposite direction. Absolutely. Bella, come on now. Come here, Miss Claus. All right, there. Okay? But we see Jesus in verse 32 leading his followers into the situation. Jesus predicted his own death, knew where and when it was going to happen, and willingly permitted himself to be killed to accomplish his role as the world's sacrifice for sin. In the Old Testament, people, I love when cats slime me. You know how they'll slobber on you with their mouth to mark you? Mm-hmm. It's such love they're showing when they do that. Anyways, in the Old Testament, people dragged unwilling sheep to the altar as a sacrifice for their sins. But no one could have dragged Jesus to the cross. Thank God the Lamb of God walked to the altar willingly. Amen. Mark 10:35, and James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came up to him and said to him, Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you. James and John, two of Jesus' closest disciples, came up to him with a request. Matthew's gospel reveals their mother was there with them, Matthew 20:20. In verses 36 to 38, and he said to them, "What do you want me to do for you?" And they said to him, "Grant us to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left in your glory." And Jesus said to them, "You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink, or to be baptized with the baptism with which I am baptized?" And they said to him, "We are able." And Jesus said to them, "The cup that I drink you will drink, and with the baptism with which I am baptized you will be baptized. But to sit at my right hand or at my left is not mine to grant, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared." Okay, Bella, you need to pause it now. Pause, go back in, pause, and go nurse your squishy. Tell me mouth's dry again. In the last few chapters, we've started to see the apostles jockeying for positions of prestige in the kingdom. Mark 9:33 and 34. Here, James and John asked Jesus for positions of high honor in the coming kingdom, to sit one at your right hand and one at your left in your glory. Now, when we read that, when we read that just now, did you notice that it doesn't show that Jesus got angry and started yelling at them for asking that, right? No, there's no anger there. But that's one thing I have to say about The Chosen. I did not agree when they showed like little snippets of season 4. They show the scene for this particular thing right here, and Jesus is mad. He's ticked off. He's like yelling at him. He's angry, and I that disturbed me because I don't think that made Jesus mad that they wanted to, that they were asking that. Why would that make him angry? And why would he yell? I don't really know of 2 times in the Bible that it talks about Jesus being angry. Whenever they were selling doves and pigeons and stuff like that in the Father's house, and he took cords and made a whip out of it and started whipping the people and letting all the animals go, saying, "Stop turning my Father's house into this is supposed to be a house of prayer, and you've turned it into a den of thieves," right? And the other time that I know of that he got angry was when he cursed the fig tree, right? That's the only 2 times that I know of that I can recall it actually saying that he was angry, right? I don't know of any other time. So that kind of bothered me that they portrayed Jesus that way. Now I usually am all about The Chosen, but I didn't like that. That really upset me. Not upset me, but disturbed me. So I don't know. That's just my opinion. That's just me, and other people, they may not care. But it does bother me because to me, they're changing what the Bible portrays. Because we just read it. He asked them, "Are you able to drink from the cup? Are you able to be baptized with the baptism with which I am baptized?" And they said to him, "We're able." And Jesus said to them, "The cup that I drink, you will drink, and with the baptism with which I am baptized, you will be baptized. But to sit at my right hand or my left hand is not mine to grant." There's no anger in those words. It doesn't say, "And Jesus was angry and yelled at them, 'How dare you ask such a thing? Who do you think you are?'" Nothing like that. So that kind of bothered me, but it's just a show anyway. But in the last few chapters, we're starting to see that they're jockeying for positions of prestige in the kingdom. Okay, so, they ask, if they can sit one to the right and left in the glory. He tells them they don't know what they're asking. They have an idea what the kingdom is going to be like, but their perception and the true nature of the kingdom are very different. What? Will you speak words? I cannot hear you. Give me just a second. I gave you the pills for today, last night. And so you get me all your pills for today. You get me 4 that you would have for today. And you took 4 of the 4 you were giving for today, last night. I'll get you one. I'm in the middle of a video right now. This is ridiculous. Sorry about that. Just a second. Where was I? Okay, I'll just read where it says right here. They have an idea what the kingdom is going to be like, but their perception and the true nature of the kingdom are very different. To be great in the kingdom is to be the servant of all. Mark 9:35. Jesus asked them, "Are you able to drink the cup that I drink, or to be baptized with the baptism with which I am baptized?" What is the cup? The cup of wrath. Right? This appears to be a reference to the suffering Christ would endure to accomplish his mission. Of course it is. Yes. In John 18:11, then said Jesus unto Peter, "Put up thy sword into the sheath. The cup which my Father hath given me, shall I not drink it?" Ouch! Matthew 26:39, and he went a little further and fell on his face and prayed, saying, "Oh, my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as thou wilt." Were they able to participate or drink with Christ in his sufferings to be glorified like him? What is the baptism? When we think about baptism, we generally think about people being dunked in water in a church building. But strictly speaking, the term baptism means immersion. As I understand it, this is essentially a... Peggy, if I have to take you, you know, I'm going to stand. Out, out. I'm not ready to start down. See what I deal with? Satan is such a liar. But strictly speaking, the term baptism means immersion. As I understand it, this is essentially a rephrasing of the first question. Can they be immersed in the sufferings of Christ? They responded, "We are able." Jesus doesn't tell them they're wrong. In fact, he confirms the truth of their response. They would suffer with Christ. James would serve the cause of the kingdom until being killed by Herod in the book of Acts. That's right. John, who probably lived longer than any other apostle, would spend decades in the Lord's service and encounter no shortage of suffering, right? They affirmed Jesus' question, but it is almost certain they had no idea what the cup of Christ contained and what it meant for their futures. They would suffer for the cause of the kingdom, but the positions they requested were not Christ to give away. It wasn't that Christ lacked the authority. They were essentially asking for a political appointment. They knew Christ was going to establish a kingdom, and because they were his friends, they asked him for a high post in his government. And weren't we just reading the other day about not to exalt yourself? Those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Yeah. Wow. But glory in the kingdom of God doesn't work like politics. God would give positions of high honor to those who, in his grace, he counted fit for the honor. Mark 10:41, and when the 10 heard it, they began to be indignant at James and John. We know from verses like Luke 22:24, there was some strain, that just doesn't sound right. There was some strain in the apostles' relationship over the question of who was to be the greatest. The other 10 apostles probably thought it was a pretty scummy thing for John and James to bring their mom along to try to gain some favor from Jesus. The application, even in kingdom work, there is a temptation to jockey for position. People inside the kingdom can struggle just as much as those outside with temptations to pride and desires for personal prestige. verses 42 through 45. And Jesus called them to him and said to them, "You know that those who are considered rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them. But it shall not be so among you. But whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever would be first among you must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." Jesus teaches his apostles a new definition of greatness in these 4 verses. Greatness in God's eyes look a whole lot different than greatness in men's eyes. We think great men ought to be served by others. Those who are considered great in the eyes of the world often have dozens of servants at their beck and call. But the one God considers greatest is the servant of others. Jesus is the best example of a life of service. Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem to give his own blood as a ransom price for the freedom of sinners. It's hard to get a clear picture of practice what you preach. Boy, I was awake at 4 and he was not. Anyway, verses 46 through 52. And they came to Jericho, and as he was leaving Jericho with his disciples and a great crowd, Bartimaeus, a blind beggar, the son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside. And when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." This Walmart water tastes like crap. Tastes like tap water. Gross. Bottled water. Ugh. And when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." And many rebuked him, telling him to be silent. But he cried out all the more, "Son of David, have mercy on me." And Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." And they called the blind man, saying to him, "Take heart, get up, he is calling you." And throwing off his cloak, he sprang up and came to Jesus. And Jesus said to him, "What do you want me to do for you?" And the blind man said to him, "Rabbi, let me recover my sight." And Jesus said to him, "Go your way. Your faith has made you well." And immediately he recovered his sight and followed him on the way. That water really tastes like crap. That makes such a terrible taste in my mouth. I usually buy my water from Winco. Ugh. Gross. When Jesus was departing Jericho and turning west. I think that was supposed to be west. Turning west to Jerusalem, Bartimaeus, blind beggar, heard he was walking by. That water tastes just about as disgusting. That's a shame, because it was like a case of 40 or whatever. It was nasty. I don't buy store water. That's why I only buy it at Winco. Who knows this? That's gross. I think that water may have gotten hot and then cold again or something. Ugh. Oh, I can't drink that. Ugh. Not being able to locate Jesus with his eyes, he started yelling for him, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." Many standing around Bartimaeus rebuked him and told him to be quiet, but Bartimaeus kept yelling until he got Jesus' attention. Jesus asked him what he wanted him to do for him, and Bartimaeus responded, "Rabbi, let me recover my sight." Jesus commended his faith and healed him. The application? Take a second to observe the parallels between this man and ourselves. This man was trapped in darkness. We are trapped in the darkness of sin. This man was willing to do anything to get to Jesus, even when others disapproved. We should be willing to do anything to get to Jesus, even when others disapprove. Jesus was this man's only hope to see. Jesus is our only hope to escape eternal darkness. The application? We should be careful not to suppress the zeal of those excited about Christ. Amen. And that concludes this particular reading for December 5th of Daily Bread, Bible in a Year with a Light Bible Study. So I say shalom to you for now. I'll go ahead and get today's Daily Bread reading ready before we have to leave for Kingfisher, and then I shall return.